Zach Hanson, how are you?
Pretty damn good.
You're back, baby.
Yeah.
You're back. So the first time you and I met was to go over your book, Turning Feral, right? Your original book, yeah?
It is. We hadn't met at the gym at that
No,
point.
we hadn't even met. We trained at the same gym, which was hilarious.
Yeah.
And then you reached out. You're like, hey, man, I think you train at the same place I do.
Yep.
Had this book. Really enjoyed your book, by the way, Turning Feral. I was telling my wife about it just the other day. I'm like, oh, I got my buddy Zach coming back in. Then we got to train more, which was great. And, unfortunate for you, but it's fine for me.
Yeah, it's unfortunate for me.
We talked in our first conversation about the nature of essentially learning how to be a human again in a world that's hyper technologically based. And there are a lot of problems with integrating more into technology, both from an education standpoint, from an employment standpoint, and from like a human experience standpoint, right? And you're at the forefront amazingly, even though you wrote this book about, like trapping beavers and stuff and bow hunting bears, you amazingly work in the tech industry in AI. Talk to me a little bit about the state of AI and what you see as some of the things that, everybody knows truck drivers are going to be in a bad position.
Lawyers.
Ironically, the solution, lawyers. Ironically, the solution to truck drivers originally was learn to code. And now that's going to be gone, because there are plenty of AI assisted, coding and app creation programs. But what are you worried about as somebody on the front line that exists in the tech world, but you also live in this very physical world of hunting, of jujitsu, of, getting your hands dirty?
Yeah. Well, for context, so I've been in the tech world for the last 13 years.
God, that coffee is really good.
It is really good.
Although
You did a good job.
I am impressed about your 13-year comment. That's great.
Well, but the French press.
The French press.
Definitely. It ups the game. Yeah, it's great. But 13 years in the tech world. So I started in speech models. So I worked at IBM Watson specifically, in product management, which means I'm not the one with my hands on the keyboard. So I want to be very clear of that. I'm not a coder. I am not a programmer. I am the guy who helps figure out the business application for these technologies. So I have that perspective. But I started in speech models where we did speech to text, text to speech. So think about Alexa. That's what a speech model is. It's something that you can speak to. It translates it to text, does something to it, and in some instances, translates it back to speech in the form of Alexa, and you get an audio output, right? That's where I started my career. So 13 years ago, that was the new wave. It was right before Alexa came out and everything was about speech models. So pretty cool. We're like, oh man, this AI thing's gonna really go somewhere. And it did. It helps some in like call center applications. It helps some in, customer service applications,
Sure.
things like that. But it's really been the last 3 or 4 years, which I think everybody listening is going to know is all about LLMs, large language models. And that's just been, amazing and scary to watch evolve, especially from like the seat I'm in, which is like, how do we do the business application of these large language models? But you already said it, it's equal parts interesting and scary across a number of different aspects. It's scary from the job replacement aspect, and we can talk about that. It's scary from what I call brain rot of our kids and ourselves, right? Whether it's through social media or even just through constantly relying on ChatGPT or Claude or any of these models to kind of think for us. Those are kind of the two main areas that are just kind of
a little wild.
Yeah, a little wild.
Interesting business applications, two notable cases of business applications where the outcome, the business application was not the original intent: Ozempic and Viagra.
Yep.
Both found incredible market share in areas that they did not intend at all. I think Viagra was originally like a blood pressure medication, and Ozempic had something to do with wasn't it like a thyroid issue?
It was. That's what it targets.
Yeah, right. And both of them, they're like, dude, a lot of people lost weight on this. And with Viagra, in this notable case, it was amazing because all of the attorneys grew like 2 inches in height.
Amen to that.
Terrible. I'm a terrible person.
Well, it's funny, talking about tariffs and stuff. I got a little bit of an information from some friends in Ireland. They're like, I don't think tariffs are going to hit us here. And I'm like, why is that? They're like, well, turns out Ireland's the #1 exporter for butter, as you can imagine, and Viagra.
Okay, both of those things are important. But have you ever had that like Irish gold butter?
Oh yeah,
dude, that is
that
some
Kerrygold.
thick. Yes, that's what I'm talking about.
Oh yeah,
that is some thick stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Like if you get away from what's the other one? Valley something, Nature's Valley or whatever it is.
yeah.
No,
Land of Lakes.
Land O'Lakes wasn't even Valley.
They're the one that
was
got
like
rebranded.
Yeah, but they're like a big. Do you mess around with beef tallow? You a big beef tallow guy?
I'm not I have messed around with it. You know, I'm beef tallow curious. But but it's good. But you know, we don't have like a supplier. I don't have a guy to go to or a gal to, you know, open their trench coat and give me the beef tallow.
I'm totally down to, you know, rediscover the wisdom that we used to have like Crisco. Right. I think that there was something that happened in the 50s when we started leaning into technology really intensely. And they're like, I know we can make, you know, this oil that looks exactly like butter, but like without any of the saturated fat. Yeah. So then you got like,
margarine.
You know, right. By the way, my stepmom's from Montana, and when my dad and stepmom got married, I was in like 6th grade, I think. And while they went on their honeymoon, we went and hung out with the step grandma and grandpa in Montana, which was like totally fine, whatever. And dude, they put margarine on like country crock. Mm-hmm. Oh my God!
I still have so I just got back from a vacation, and I was at my parents' house in South Carolina, and I found, you know, the tubs that they've been reused, obviously, or repurposed.
Right.
But they still exist, man.
The tubs. And I came home from that and hanging out with my mom, not my stepmom. I was like, hey, can we get some of that stuff? And I'm surprised she didn't go blind because her eyes rolled so hard. They like fell out of her head momentarily and rolled down the stairs. And I think she like got a little thing once, and then we just went right back to the butter, and I just went right back to murdering toast with that, you know, like refrigerator butter. I don't know why she didn't just get like room temperature butter, like just get a butter dish and put on, like we do that.
Yeah, that's what we do now.
My boys enjoy whenever they have toast, they just butter and no problem. But like, anyway, well, I was going to say, I got off on Ozempic and, you know, other stuff. Anyway,
and Viagra.
Yeah, right. Like and beef tallow. Like I'm not a big, like I like ghee. Ghee's fine or butter's fine, but beef tallow is just, there's something, but we tried it recently for a lot of cooking. I just got a Blackstone too. And I just,
I'll give you some bear fat. So talk about like getting back to the old ways. So that is one thing that we do leverage a lot in replacement of beef tallow would be bear fat. Yeah. You know, just rendered down. So,
or you just cook bacon once a week.
Yeah.
And you have like a jar of bacon fat, and that's fine.
When I did keto for a long time, I just, you cook your bacon in the morning.
You did keto. Is this when you had a giant beard?
No, it was way before that.
Oh my God. Yeah. God bless you. Anyway, let's get back to it. So we have a lot of things coming down that are going to change, right? And the large language models, right? You're talking about ChatGPT and Claude,
Grok.
Yeah, all of that. These are things that you can ask people, or you can ask, not people, but you ask the program whatever you want. It spits out, it aggregates information, no creativity, no coming up with a new answer. It's only a compilation of what already exists on the interwebs.
Well, it depends on how you define that. But I mean, yes, you're right. But I mean, creativity, and you could prompt it to come up with something novel. Now, you know, it is based on existing data, existing facts. So the degree at which it is novel is probably not like a real creative, not someone sitting down writing a book or painting a picture, but it is novel to some degree in some applications.
You know what you don't know, but I'm going to tell you, novel thing. I watched Friday yesterday.
Okay.
Friday with Ice Cube and Chris Tucker. Dude, that was a funny, like really good movie.
So was Friday After Next.
I think it was wasn't it next Friday? Or was it actually Friday After Next?
I think it was Friday After Next. I could be wrong.
Could be. That wasn't as good. That was like Dumb and Dumber 2 or like, you know.
Happy Gilmore 2.
Happy Gilmore 2 or Ace Ventura 2. No, I mean, amazing. Secondary was Hot Shots Part 2. That was a good one. Anyway, so the point is that like that kind of ingenuity, that kind of creativity, unlikely that it would be able to deliver something like that, right? Because I like Key and Peele, genius, right? Chappelle, genius, very novel, very unique. They're not going to be able to do something like, you could tell it, write me a joke like Dave Chappelle, but it's not going to create a Dave Chappelle out of nowhere.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that's where this gets to be a real gray area pretty quickly, because ultimately you could say, yeah, I got these premises for this joke, write it in the style of Key and Peele, a Key and Peele skit. And you might be able to get something that's pretty far down the line that you might be able to, film and create, or have, the model create it for you. And it might come pretty close to feeling pretty real. But like intuitively, I think, at least for the next foreseeable future, I talk with a lot of colleagues about it. I'm like, I get an email from somebody, or I get a PowerPoint presentation. I'm like, man, this thing just smells like an LLM, right?
So essentially, they copy and pasted it.
Or they took it and aggregated it, and it's okay in a lot of applications. But like these creative applications, like you said, I think you're going to get a lot of stuff that you're going to start questioning, like, is this or is this not? Because you're going to get that intuitive feel, like this smells like an LLM. This smells like it doesn't quite pass the reality sniff test. And I think that line is going to continue to blur more and more, because you have all these great movies from the 90s, books, everything, everybody's an actor now, everybody's an author now with LLMs. Like, you can do a lot of stuff, but that line of being able to pick out what's truly authentic versus not is becoming harder and harder to delineate.
Yeah. And when you talk about authentic inquiries, I have somehow people started finding it like PR firms, right? Mm-hmm. And their whole job is to get their client, the PR client, lined up with media outlets, right? And they do podcasts. And what they'll do is, dude, I know it. Like, I can smell it a mile away. Somebody will email me and say, hey, the ranch team. That's first strike, right? Or, hey, Matt and Todd. Like, I'm one person. Anyway, and then they'll say like, hey, listen to your recent episode with this person. Like, it was so powerful to hear about, the Idaho education system and what it's doing with, AI technology. And I really want you to consider having this person on who's dealing with mental health on like a national level. So it's like kind of loosely related to the topic. And then like, I know your viewers would really benefit from this kind of it's like, and you get that same form and that same like super loose correlation where you're like, you didn't listen to this. Like, this is some, summation of what you maybe think the episode was. And then you asked it to tie these two things together, or like how they could relate. 1,000%. And you can smell it a mile away.
Mm-hmm. But you might not be able to smell it a mile away soon. And I think too, like if you had somebody who spent the time with some of these models and like really tried to refine the prompt to get it to what they probably were intending it to be, which is like, hey, look at this email from Matt and Todd's perspective. And, help me craft it in a way, knowing his psychology, his birth date's this, his...
What are you?
Well, I'm saying, like, you can get that way though. Like the
like
more
Venus is in retrograde, he's
exactly.
probably he's in Aries.
Yeah.
So like, make sure.
But I mean, you could kind of start to play with that. I mean, you should take the stuff that's more concrete.
Sure.
But you can start to make the prompts to where maybe that email or those sets of emails you get that are, very clearly poorly put together via an LLM. Might actually start tugging on like your heartstrings in a way that you're like, hey, maybe I should get that person on. And maybe it does kind of slip the radar a little bit. Like, it doesn't quite, get stopped by the sniff test. And you're like, I should actually reach out to this person. This seems right. So somebody who's a little bit more proactive and knowledgeable about how to work prompts, it could be really helpful. And they might be able to kind of sneak it past a little bit. It's the laziness that catches people.
Yeah.
You're not going to get stuff right on the first prompt. Maybe the second prompt.
Sure.
Third, fourth, fifth, sixth, whatever.
Yeah, whatever it is.
So, most people are like, hey, I'm sending this out to, God knows how many podcasts,
Yeah, right.
And they're like, just take the form, fill it out, and shoot it out in the ether and see what happens.
Right.
But the people who are going to be a little smarter about it.
Yeah. And again, as you go through all this, you increase efficiency, right? So what one PR firm used to have, say, 5 people to do, now a PR firm probably has like 1 person, right? And we just keep increasing in efficiencies with things that are getting replaced by AI essentially, and those large language models. Have you seen any of the, I don't know what the character is called, but he's like the Sasquatch guy who's running around the forest and like doing all these ridiculous things. He's like making friends with squirrels and stuff. And
like the influencer thing where he's got like his little phone.
Oh yeah. He's always doing a selfie. He's like, he finds coffee and he's like, this is incredible. Like, and then he's like running for the bathroom. When people talk about AI replacing films, I actually started thinking about him. I'm like, okay, what would you rather watch? Do you want to watch like an old Disney cartoon, or would you watch like a 90-minute, like, that's fake, but Planet of the Apes were fake also, right? And like we watched those, right? Like, why is it really that much different? And I'm sure it could write plenty of comedy if you gave it the right type of character and then prompted it to the right story correctly, give it enough time, I don't know, a week. And you could probably come up with a really cool style movie that could then be, refined over time.
And I think that blending is what's going to, at least in the interim, before you can just fully rely on prompts to produce whatever you're going after, whether that's a bestseller book, whether that's a great movie or a great series or a great podcast script, whatever it is, it's going to have to be that blend of true refinement and then a human touch.
Right.
And I think that human touch is just slowly getting pushed aside, where it's getting better and better. And people are just lazier in their consumption patterns too. I think that can't be discounted either. And I think a lot of that's just our priming for the last 10, 15 years with social media. It's like, we're used to 7-second clips. We're used to, not quite truthful, consumption of media. Like, stuff's not always what it seems. And we're getting used to that. So now we're kind of like letting stuff slide. Like, oh, yeah, it looks a little bit like AI, but it still hits the main point. And it keeps me entertained for 7 seconds while I'm on the toilet. It's great.
I saw this comedian who was going off on like millennials and he's like, and not just millennials.
Are you technically a millennial? Or are you on the?
I don't know. I think I'm on the cusp.
Yeah.
I think I just missed it. Or it was not millennial. Boomers. Excuse me. Not millennials. Boomers. I saw somebody else bagging on millennials. That's fine. Everybody's been bagging on, but boomers. He's like, these people were not made for the internet. And he's like, my mom gets a hold of me and says that like some nuclear bomb has gone off somewhere, and she's all freaked out. And it's just like, she saw this clip of a news briefing, and I'm like, Mom, that's not real. And she's like, how do you know? But how do you know, Johnny? And he's like, the font is wrong. It's too fuzzy. It doesn't say like a network name. I've never seen this person before. Like, she doesn't have blah, 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 blah. He's like, he runs it. He's like, you just don't know this world. You weren't built for this world of the internet. You don't have the discriminating faculties of somebody who needs to exist on the internet. And it's like, I think that's going to be harder and harder and harder, to your point, for everybody.
Well, I think it's the two generations. So the boomers, 100%. I see it with my parents. I just spent 2 weeks with my parent. Mom, Dad, listening, love you. Sure. But,
not great with media.
No, they're not. And it's not because they don't want to, but you said they don't have the reps and that discernment on certain things. Scam text messages. I know everybody in Idaho is getting those with the
it's like the sheriff, or this is last
you had a parking ticket from a toll road that doesn't exist in our state.
Or like, we have a package and we can't deliver it, and it's from a +64 country code. I'm like, okay, what is that, Fiji?
Yeah.
Like, why is Fiji texting me about a package?
Yeah, and you immediately ignore it.
Right.
And I'll credit corporate America, at least in training me with that. Like, ever since I started in corporate America at IBM, it was, hey, watch out for phishing emails. And they would send, you do your little training, and they'd be like, if you see an email from the CEO, first off, you're not shit. So you're probably never going to get the email from the CEO.
You're not that important.
Exactly. But, they're like, look at the ending address. So, at the time, the CEO was Ginny Rometty. If you see Ginny Rometty at ceo.ibm. Something else, like, that's the first sniff test. And so you start to get that discernment reps built in. And now, like, when you see a news article or a clip today on Instagram, I saw something of it was either a wildfire or a flood, and it was like flooding in Texas, but it was like a basilic cathedral, like very realistic, but it's like, okay, I'm pretty sure I'm not aware of any basilic cathedrals in Texas.
Are those flying buttresses?
Yeah, exactly. But that, but then my mom would have been like, oh my God, there's floods in Texas again.
Dude, I had a family member, and I'm not going to say who, the person's definitely over 70, send me a clip of Jesus coming out of the sky in Jerusalem, and people being like, and at first it was the news broadcasters, and they're like, Jesus has come down, and then it cuts to like, the shaky cell phone footage of Jesus coming down, and I was like, hey, family member,
That's just
do
an
you,
ICBM.
are you for like, do you actually think this is happening? The family member said, yes, I believe. I said, okay, family member. So if that's true, why hasn't anyone else seen it in the news? Like, can you just Google Jesus landing in Jerusalem 2025 and see if any news agents, because if people have this on their cell phones, it should be everywhere. And the person was like, yeah, okay.
But you have that. So the boomer, like that's a great, clear example.
Yeah.
And we see it in all of our parents' generation. But then the other thing is like the millennial, and maybe like on either side of that a little bit. Like I didn't get my first cell phone until I was in college. And like the iPhone came out like middle of me being in undergrad.
Wow, man. I didn't know I'm that. I'm like 6 years older than you.
Yeah.
I graduated in 2004. I got my first cell phone in 2003, and it was one of those bricks.
Yeah.
So you're like 6
Well, I
years.
mean, I had a Nokia brick. I guess.
Yeah, I had that Nokia one.
Yeah. So I had that earlier.
Yeah.
But like I'm talking about like the
Like smartphones.
getting
Like
it.
BlackBerry style, something with QWERTY.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, that took a while. And like we learned on the fly, like as this technology was evolving, we were growing with it. So you have boomers, us, and then my concern is I'm looking at my kids, these like digital natives, like these kids who are coming up, like, I don't know if they're going to have the discernment skills. You would think because they're digitally native, they would, but I'm very concerned. Like you can look on and you see kids and other stuff like, hey, and my kids will look at something I'm looking at on my phone over my shoulder and they'll be like, what is that, Dad? I'm like, oh, it's something that's not real. They're like, that looks real. And that's scary to me as a father.
Yeah, I think, well, first off, you have younger kids, right?
Yeah. 4 and below.
Yeah, right. So, of course, the 4-year-old thinks it looks real. 4-year-old still believes
She
it's
also
Santa.
thinks she's a snow leopard. So
Right. So there's that.
Yeah.
And then you should show her a picture from like Nature is Metal of the snow leopard jumping over the cliff to get the goat. And it's like, are you that snow leopard?
Yeah.
No, you're not. Because that thing is hard as nails, right?
Yeah.
But I think we can train our kids. Like I don't let my kids, none of my kids have personal tech devices. Okay. The only thing they have is my oldest has a Chromebook that is administered from school that we keep locked up and like stored away because he just doesn't need to come home with a Chromebook, but the school doesn't want to store it. And that's a whole nother thing. But with my kids, I actually send them out because they see me. I don't consume social media in front of my kids, but I do have to post things occasionally if I don't schedule them out or like I'll do a little thing. And I will explain to them why people comment on posts. For instance, this is a great education. And I sat down with my middle son who's like 11. And I was like, listen, man, people will comment on this for like 10 different reasons. And I started walking through. And in fact, just the other day, I was explaining to them how I can spot a bot. Like there are bots that are created for a number of different reasons, either drive products, drive sentiment. There are bots that are utilized to just cause arguments and make people upset. And it became this big conversation of how do you know if it's a bot? And it's like all the different criterion. So in the end of the 10 minutes, I was pulling up profiles of people that were commenting. And I was like, is this a hyper-inflammatory or like random comment? It's like, if it's hyper-inflammatory, you click on the thing. Okay. Are there any posts? Okay. 0 posts. Okay. How many people is it following? How many people are following the account? And he was like, oh, that's definitely a bot. I'm like, exactly. Random person, no posts, only like 20 people following it. It's following 3,000 people and it's saying hyper-inflammatory things. Even if it's not a bot, it's acting like a bot.
Yeah, but you're a good parent.
Right.
You're taking the time to sit down and do these things, which I mean, I wish all parents to do this thing. I would plan to do the same with my kids as they kind of become of age. I don't think that's the majority of our society.
Zach, it's never the majority of the society that has parents that are doing the right thing. So like you used to live in a very rural area with your kids.
Yes.
You probably taught them about mushrooms and to not eat the mushrooms, right?
Yeah.
I guarantee you there's some parent or some collection of parents living in the same area that were not as diligent with like, don't touch or eat that, right? Like you also have problems with alcohol. Yeah. Like you have problems with, driving. You have you have parents that are going to go the extra mile, and in the digital world, you just have one more mile to go.
Yeah. But it's just so pervasive. I mean, I guess everything else is too. It's just the tentacles are so deep in everything now. Alcohol's one thing, right? You talk about teaching your kids to not eat the mushrooms with the gills that look a certain way, or
don't eat any mushrooms.
Don't hug the bobcat. Those kinds of things. Like those are common knowledge, but they're usually the niche depending on where you live or like your family history. But we already talked about it. It's everywhere. It's in everything that we consume. It's in the schools. It's in, church. It's everywhere.
It's everywhere.
And you can sit there with your kid and point out all these things, and hopefully you're building discerning young kids. But then if that's 1 out of 6 kids, and then the other kids come running around and say, look what I saw. I don't know how we solve that problem, or if it's solvable.
Yeah, the problem with peer exposure is like listen, I'm not a very good parent, and I haven't figured out how to navigate this. This is one of my real downsides. Like, I went to kids' houses. I had this buddy, Danny Willis. Danny Willis lived like 2 blocks up the street. I'd go over to Danny Willis's house. He had a Nintendo. Dude, he was rolling. He got the Nintendo magazine. So like, he knew in like Super Mario Brothers 3, he knew like, when you go to the mushroom hut and there were like all the things that he knew what the combos for all of them were. And like, once you got the first 3 figured out, he's like, okay, hang on. And we'd find the right page. We're like, 37, there it is. And then you like slowly punch and you got all the combos and you avoided the bad stuff. So I'd go over to Danny's house and nobody thought 2 things about it. My buddy Jess Pomeroy lived literally, I think they like shared a fence. It was like right behind him. And we were all friends at school. I don't let my kids go to somebody's house. I don't know what the tech relationship is in that house. I don't know what the allotment is. I don't know. Like, if a kid takes one of my boys into a bedroom and has a cell phone, we're never returning to that house because I don't know what's on that phone. I don't know what they're doing in there. And those are concerns. Now, very luckily for me, I have 3 boys and they're very, very good friends. And, we can invite people over to our spot and say like, hey, look, just so you know, they're not going to be on tech at all. They're not allowed with tech. We're going to have them outside. We're going to have them doing these things. So parents know. And we also ask them, please don't send your kid with tech, but parents don't even always listen to that. Sometimes they just send them and then you catch them like 20 minutes later, looking at something in the corner somewhere. It's like, get the hell off of that thing. How do you plan on managing that?
Well, I mean, we're starting early and I hope it's a good thing, but
you want an extra splash?
I sure do.
Hell yeah, man. God, the coffee's hitting hard today. There you go.
I don't know how we're going to handle it. I mean, I'd be a liar if I said we had it mapped out. But right now, so we have 3 kids, 4 and under, and we don't do screen time. So that's not fully true. We do strategic screen time.
Sure.
So
my kids get to play Xbox.
Right. And our kids, like, they get their Paw Patrol every once in a while. But like
Paw Patrol.
Oh, I could sing the whole thing, baby. Just don't get me started
I hear it
on
in
that.
my nightmares.
I know. Well, I'm your nightmare. I know what to do next time we're rolling.
Yeah.
Anyways, when, like, for us, we went on a 2-week vacation with my parents. We did like a full abstaining from all screens for about 3 weeks before we left because we knew they were going to be on the airplane and we could just give them. Yep.
You got
and it was great. Kids were great. They did it all. But even then, like, it is like, talk about sugar and how it's like more addictive than cocaine. Obviously, like the side effects are way less. I see it in my 4-year-olds, and we are very screen limited. We don't have a TV in our house. So if they watch anything, it's on an iPad. That's it. Or a cell phone. So all small screens, nothing in the house that's pervasive from that perspective.
Right.
And if they get a little taste of that, man, it is bad. Like the meltdowns, the freaking out that they want more. And then it's like, okay, well now we're off for another 2 weeks.
Right.
We can't do it. So I don't know how we're going to navigate that. Like, we will probably be that family too that is relatively tech free.
Right.
My big concern too, like you said, with having kids go everywhere, like my ex-wife, FBI special agent, she worked violent crimes against kids. Like a lot of it starts online. And like, kids get these access to cell phones, they might be locked up, but you can get anything online these days. And it's like at literally a few clicks away. And kids are curious. Young boys are curious. It is so hard. And I don't know how we're going to navigate it outside of being fully locked down. And I don't know how we do it. I mean, you sound like you have a pretty good approach. I like it. I'll probably mimic something like that, but.
Yeah, but I mean, I think you're 100% right. There's no, what the problem with online porn in particular is? It's like alcohol or cocaine. Like, I've never tried cocaine, but I do know that I have a friend and I asked him, he's like, yeah, I've tried cocaine a couple times. I'm like, what's it like? He's like, you wouldn't like it. I'm like, no. He's like, no, stick with coffee. But he had tried cocaine and it was not something he liked. And like, I'm absolutely not advocating for that. And I was like, okay, great. Like, I didn't have a lot of experience, but I do know some people have a problem with cocaine.
Yeah.
alcohol. I could drink a beer. Dude, I found this gluten-free beer that I'm very happy about. It's like, I love having just especially after workout. What's that?
Especially in the summer too.
And it's only like 4.5%, so it's not too heavy. Oh, it's the best. Anyway, but like my max for beers is like 2. So I don't have a problem with alcohol. I can drink a beer or 2, or even have like a gin and tonic, and I am totally fine not having another drink for a long time, right? No problem. That's not the way it is for some people. And I've met people in recent times that are affected by pornography, online pornography, like the coke addict or like the alcoholic, and they go down a rabbit hole and they cannot stop themselves. And in a lot of cases that I've heard, it leads to breakups of marriages, destruction of family units. You know, like people end up, the mental health trauma that comes from that is substantial. So what I'm hoping to do with my kids, my boys, because I have 3 boys, and I'm like the most worried about like drugs, porn, and somebody getting pregnant, right? Like that's all bad. The thing I'm trying to do with them is help them have control of themselves until they have control of themselves.
Yeah.
So they don't have access to it, because I don't think they could control themselves at this point. At my age, I could control myself, right?
Well, you built that discipline.
That's right.
Muscle.
But they need to be at least like 18 and not, you know, holed up in their room for their teen years, not talking to girls because they're just watching online pornography.
Well, I mean, this is going to sound funny, but I'm sure for you and for me, going through like those prime developmental years, porn was always there, but you had to work to find it. You know, like it was not at the tip of your fingers, right? So like it was not something that was pervasive. And like, you know, speaking of alcohol too, like you and I have somebody we mutually know. I don't know, from Jiu-Jitsu Talk, Kyle. You know, do you know his story at all?
No.
So interesting guest. You should definitely have him on. But he and I were business partners. He's a hunting buddy of mine and was an alcoholic for 10 years. I had no idea. Tried to end his life with alcohol. I ended up driving him to rehab, picking him up from rehab, made an amazing recovery. And he's had a lot of trauma in the interim with losing a daughter, like wild story, but amazingly uplifting story. But I'm like you. I have never had a bad relationship with alcohol, meaning I could always cut myself off. I could go to a party, I could have 1 or 2 drinks and be done and be like, I'm fine. Or, you know, crazy.
Or go hard.
Yeah, go hard.
Go to a bachelor party and like, that's fine. You come home. That's like, that was a bad weekend.
Yeah,
like, I got to sweat it out for the next 2 years.
Exactly. Right. And so I never had that relationship. Same with pornography. I've never had that bad relationship with pornography. And, you know, I'm in like a fitness group with guys, and, you know, one of the guys who leads it, like, it always surprised me. I was telling my wife this, like I've done a Bible study group here in Boise, and I've done like this online, like fitness coaching. And every time, like the number one thing amongst the guys outside of alcohol is pornography issues. And like a lot of these guys are like accountability groups. So people are being honest, like, yeah, I really struggled this week. Or a lot of these guys are buying those like bricks to put on their phones, or their wives are having them do that so they can monitor their browser history. And I can't
wait. What's the brick?
Yeah.
What are you talking about? What's this product?
I think it's called the brick.
Okay.
But it's essentially something where you can't access certain things on your phone as an adult. Like you can't potentially even access a web browser. Or if you access a web browser, it like pings your accountability buddy, which might be your wife or might be your friend or somebody like that. But these guys are needing that level of scrutiny to resist. You said, like, they go down this rabbit hole. And I can't relate to it at all. And it's always shocking to me, but it is pervasive. And I think maybe it's because I was on the skirts or the outskirts of it being like completely readily available as I was coming of age. And it just never got its hooks in me, thankfully. But,
man, I do a lot of tech safety stuff. There's a really cool thing getting rolled out by the state soon too, as well. But in, you know, talking to mixed groups of people about tech safety, especially with school tech, right? Because school tech is not safe. Like they try to make it as safe as possible every single day they go to work. They'll never do it. And they know that. And the state of Idaho is about to make an announcement that they're like, yeah, look, it's not safe and we understand that. We're working, but like, this is what you need to do to make sure you keep your kids safe and your family safe, right? It's an important thing. But in talking to younger people, you always kind of like add in funny stuff. And one of the things is expressing, as you're saying, it's like, listen, I remember when I was 16 and I realized there was pornography on the internet, right? But the effort you would have to go through, first off, there was not like a site where you could get it. So you had to like scroll to like walk the internet because you didn't have Google like back in 96 or whatever it was, right? So you didn't have Google. And even if you had it, I didn't know it existed. And so you'd have to like walk around the internet trying to find these things. And then even once you found one, the photo had to download. You're not looking at videos. You had to download.
Is pixel like line by line.
And so you could imagine me as a 16-year-old, like white knuckling the desk, like, oh my God, here it comes. Here it comes. And then my sister's friend calls and screws up the
Kills
connection.
the line. Yeah.
I throw my monitor out the window. And then it was so hard to find that I got smart. I was like, I know, I'll just save them to my desktop. Like, you can imagine how all this goes. My grandpa comes over to visit. Anyway, yeah, like there was a cost to doing that. And it wasn't this readily available, excuse me, thing. You know, and it's probably the same thing as alcohol. I guarantee you, as a younger person who didn't have parents that were really looking over shoulder, if alcohol had been more readily available to me, I probably would have drank more. And maybe that would have led to more bad decisions and a worse life outcome. But alcohol wasn't readily available. And so, you know, I just moved on with my life, you know, and the times when I was like, gosh, maybe I should, you know, drink something because I'm an 18-year-old idiot. It's like, well, that ain't an option. So like, would you like some watermelon?
Yep.
There's that instead, you know, but yeah, like, I think that's kind of the play with young people, which is to realize like you really gotta, they're not going to be able to control themselves.
But how do you build that resiliency in kids? I mean, like there's, you know, I got a lot of it in sports. I'm sure you did too.
Right. Yeah.
You know, like as you're coming of age, you learn that discipline, but like building discipline on the digital front, not having that barrier of entry like we had with dial-up connections and everything else like that. Like, how do you do that? Do you have an idea? I don't.
I think it's like athletics. When I was growing up, I was an avid athlete, still am. And, you know, the adults in my life, be it in high school or in college, would always say, they're like, listen, you know how to work hard, right? You're going to be great in the business world. And I was very worried about making money or how I was going to make money because I didn't grow up with very much. And I was very worried about that. And I was like, what do you mean? They're like, you know how to work. Like, if you know how to work, you're going to be able to make money. And I think you have to bring that level of simplicity, which is, look, if you know how to control yourself, you'll have a better shot at controlling yourself. Now, that doesn't mean that you're always going to be successful. And it doesn't mean you should even feel terrible about, like, if you see something, like if you see, you know, like you're on Instagram and Instagram will occasionally try to get me with things, right? Because my feed is, you know, like the dumb AI gorilla guy and like street food videos from India and like a repair guy and like
sounds like we have the same account.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And occasionally be like, let's see if we can get him. And it'll like almost raw, almost straight up pornography. Like, and I'm like, oh, nope, not doing that. And swipe right past. So retrain the algorithm or I'll turn it off and turn it back on. And I think that's what you have to explain to them. It's like, listen, you're not a bad person for wanting to look at this, right? You're going to want to look at it and you're going to be like, oh my gosh, this is like, it's going to short circuit your brain. But the further and further you can get away from that thing, allowing that thing to have the hooks in you, the better off you're going to be. Right? If you're an alcoholic and you don't know right away that no, you can't go hang out at the bar and no, you can't just, maybe I can just smell it. Maybe, could I just put it in my mouth and spit it back out? Like every step you go down.
I'm wine tasting.
And then it's like, you're just chugging down tequila. I think that's what you do. You just train them to, one, not feel shame and two, help them understand what's happening with them and how to stop it. Right? Like I was at Father's Day. This was pretty funny. We a couple years ago, go to downtown Boise. I think it was Father's Day 22. We go to downtown Boise, go to Hump and Hannah's, and we go to St. Lawrence's Gridiron first. Very good food there, and then go a big group of dads go out to this bar, and we're there just getting drinks, right? And there was this gal who was like provocatively dressed and like totally latched onto the group. And she's like trying to hang out with us and and she came up to try to talk to me. And my only response was like, you have the wrong guy. She's like, no, what do you do? I'm like, you have the wrong guy. Like, I'm not the guy you want. Like, you got the wrong person. And eventually she just stopped trying to talk to me because she knew I wasn't biting. I think that's just what you have to hopefully train young people to do, which is, look, you're going to want to talk to this person. Just like you're going to have an impulse, but you have to use, your prefrontal cortex and be like, no, man, I'm not tired. Like, I'm not interested in you. Like, yeah.
I mean, it's a good point. It just, I still see when you have that device in your hand, it's so easy. You know, it's so easy to scroll and it's so easy to get down that rabbit hole of whatever you're looking at. And that's hard.
What about, you have written a second book, right? And again, here we are. I haven't had a chance to read it yet, but you and I've talked about the premise a lot, which I very much agree with. What about offering young people that you're worried about a more enticing engagement in the real world that overcomes their desire to be on the device?
Well, I think I said I don't have a solution, but I do think it's about balancing it, right? Like if you have a kid who's sitting alone in a house for however many hours a day and they have that device and they have no other outlet, whether that's sports, whether that's just going outside, whether that's being with friends, that lends itself to not having the self-control muscle when you're sitting there alone. I think we all experience at night when we're sitting up in our bed, whether it's social media or whatever, and you're like, oh, I should be doing something more productive.
Bro, don't bring your phone into your room.
We don't.
It's never
we
good.
Don't. We don't.
Yeah,
this is.
I got you. I got you. I got you.
Right?
A picture.
Yeah, this is a picture. But for me, so this is going to be a little bit not a tangent, but worked in the AI industry for 13 years. I went through my first layoff in the AI world in 2023. So actually, the first time that you and I chatted, I was unemployed.
I knew you were a loser.
I know. I was just down and out, just a dirty unemployed.
You found me on the social webs because you're just scrolling with nothing else to do.
I needed to make those tens of dollars by being on this podcast.
Here's another loser. I can go talk to him. And you were right.
Yeah,
we connected.
We did. And we connected on a real level. Loser to loser.
There it is.
But I was unemployed. And I thought I was kind of impervious to that throughout my career because I've been in this like AI bubble. I was at a big publicly traded company. I've avoided the layoffs like a snake throughout my whole career. I just thought it was never coming, and it did. And ultimately, for me, it took me almost a year before I found another job. And I had already cobbled together the whole white collar manifest destiny of like, you know what? You need 6 months of savings. I had it. It was there. It was in the bank account. Then all of a sudden, 6 months went by. And then 7, and then 8. And Zach has 2 mortgages and 3 kids. And like the walls started to close in on me a little bit. I was like, oh my God, I was never expecting this. But the market was terrible at the time in 23 for, the AI world. Like Meta was laying people off. Amazon was, as an aside, I was talking to one company and I was talking to their CEO and I was in the final stages of the interview process. And they're like, well, we're not going with you, Zach. He's very blunt with me. I'm like, okay. Like, why? He's like, well, look, here's the honest truth. I've got 3 ex-Google engineers that, have way more experience than you, even though they were stepping down in pay grade. You're like, we're going to go with one of them. And I was like, how many people applied to this position? This one position, AI related product manager. He's like, we had over 2,000 applications, like within a couple weeks, and we shut it down. We further filtered that out by who would need, sponsored visas.
Sure.
Cold that. And then, there was another 500 who were qualified. And then, we went through and then like you had the top 30, 40, which is like, you're in and we're actually interviewing. Did great. But then there's just people who are way more qualified because they've had, all these years of experience at these big companies, but they've been laid off too. And we're taking advantage of it. And that was 23. Now I applied to 7,000 roles. I have a spreadsheet. And mind you, I ended up with 5 or 6 interviews out of those 7,000. All 6 of those came through connections, not the cold application process, right? And then
you need somebody vouching for you.
You do. And especially it's very like a incestuous world in the AI space, it starts to get smaller and smaller the higher you go up. And once I hit that month 7, I realized like, oh my God, I have nothing to fall back on. I thought I didn't. But thankfully, I had started to learn to trap and all of that. So for the last 2 months of my unemployment, I paid our mortgages by trapping.
Shut up.
Yeah.
Dude, that's wild.
It's wild. But I got lucky. I got contracts with U.S. Fish and Wildlife to do a marten study. I was selling pelts. I was doing a bunch of different stuff in the trapping space. Like I full out. Now, if you looked at my hourly rate, it was probably like $2 an hour because I was working hard and I was helping with the taxidermist up the road here. So I was like moonlighting everywhere. But in my mind, that's a trade. I had unwittingly learned to trade on the side the past several years, and that was able to bridge me until I got a new job in the AI world, which was awesome. I'm very appreciative of that. But in that reflection, I was like, oh my God, like I am so vulnerable to like my job just being gone at any time. And there's a whole set of people like me who work in the knowledge working space whose jobs could be here today, gone tomorrow. And if you don't have some budding skill to fall back on, you're going to be screwed. So I took the tact, like I ended up going to CWI, got a welding certification at night. You know, after work, I'd go to CWI and learn to stick weld and do that just so I could either build my own barbecue. And also if I get laid off again, I have something to fall back on. And I started my electrical journeyman's license process. So I'm doing night school at CWI for electrical journeymans, and I'm kind of moonlighting some with some electricians around town, just picking up hours here and there, learning to do that. Not because I'm ever going to go in the near term to be a full-time tradesman. I'm not. But in the event of, you know, AI overtaking knowledge working jobs, I will be ready and have some level of skills that are at least monetarily viable. It won't be the same pay grade that I'd be at, or it might put me in a position to buy a company, you know, that's in that space as well. So it was been this journey of severance and unemployment that, you know, pushed me down this path, but it's so pervasive. And it was bookmarked by, you know, two guys that I was, I'm not going to say friends with, but like colleagues that I knew I've had calls with and talked with. Yeah. They lost their jobs, not from the same company, but about the same time. And both committed suicide several months after losing their jobs because they could not find another job. Some of the specialties they had just weren't hiring, and they ended up, you know, killing themselves. Kids, wife, whole lot. And just, they felt they had no other recourse. They're like, this is gone. This is not, I can't be employed in here anymore, despite having a very lucrative career early on. So I think that's the scariest thing to me with this whole evolution of knowledge work. And like now you see everything just kind of coming down this funnel. You know, you listed off a bunch of different, you know, areas of work that are going to be affected by AI one way or the other. And, you know, it's going to leave a lot of people hurting, a lot of people who don't have any other skills.
Gosh, man, that's, I deeply feel that. You know, I've said this before. I had one job from the time I graduated college until the day I moved here. And that was my only thing. I don't even have a resume, right? Like it was literally, hey, I'm an SAT tutor. I work independently. I don't, you know, I didn't have a quote business because I had a business, but it was more of like a practice, right? Because I didn't have employees and stuff. And when that went away, it literally was like, oh, it's gone. It's over. It's never coming back. And even if it comes back, you know, who knows how far, like it's not coming back in the next month. It might be 5 or 10 years. It might be whatever. And the SAT, you know, not only over the pandemic went optional, but for a lot of schools, schools went test blind, like UC Berkeley or UCLA. And even large, like I think BSU still doesn't require it. I don't even know if they look at it. But the point is, you know, here was this industry. I had one skill set, you know, and that industry disappeared overnight. And that is a whole, I have 3 kids. I had a wife, like had a mortgage, and it's like, oh my God, what am I going to do? Right. And, you know, I have a dear friend who also has an MBA from Duke. I mean, very, you know,
prestigious.
Good. Yeah. Prestigious. And it was not an executive MBA. It's like a legit MBA. And he even went back when he was an adult, after some time. It was a tough pull, but he went full time. And that, again, like he's struggling with kind of what you're talking about, which is having a glut of these, you know, high-end professionals with master's degrees or all these things, because the industry is contracting in very odd ways, right? And when you take out 100 people from, say, a company like Google, and all 100 of those people go out and they start applying other places, then you're one of 100 because like now, or 101 because maybe you didn't come from there. You know, we have these problems, but the fallback of a trade, try this on for size.
Let's try it.
I really like woodworking. And when I was still tutoring, but I wasn't really in love with it. I was still doing one-on-one tutoring, and that really got depressing towards my early 30s. I'm like, what am I doing? Like, I'm just like, this isn't challenging. I feel like I'm, losing potential. Yeah, coasting, the whole thing. And that ended when I started a classroom because I was like, oh, this is taxing me big time. But in between those two things, I really loved woodworking and I needed a dining room table. So I built a dining room table, right? I didn't know how to build a dining room table, but I did. And then I built one for, a brother-in-law, and then somebody else asked me to build one. And all of a sudden somebody's like, hey, you build tables. I'm like,
I guess I do.
I guess I do. And I started building tables for people, and I was building these large tables for like what I calculated out to be like $100 to $200 an hour. It's like, this is not bad, right? And there was a period of time when like, oh, I know what I can do. Like, I'm pretty good at knowing how to start small businesses. I'm like, I'm going to find 5 people that I know that are hyper social. I'm going to build them an outside table for free, right? They're going to have parties and people are going to be like, wow, this is an awesome table. Where'd you get the table? Oh, Matt's card is like, stapled underneath the table. Like, look underneath the table. There it is. That's what I was going to do. And then I realized like, hey man, like if you like teaching, you just don't like this format of teaching, maybe switch the format. But having that backup, it was like, oh, this is a viable thing if I want it to be. I just didn't want it to be. I was like, stick with what you're doing, just change it.
But, if something contracts for you right now and you need to fall back on something, you've still got Matt and Todd's tables and chairs.
Matt and Todd's.
But,
I'm going into the door industry. Actually, a buddy of mine told me, he was like, doors are huge. You can sell a door for like $10,000.
Right.
So I'm going to go into like custom handmade doors.
Well, there we go.
But
the point is, and kind of the premise of the book. So the book kind of just goes through the history of vocational education in the United States from 1917.
This is the book, by the way, The Trade Gap.
There you go. But it has a call to action, especially for knowledge workers. Knowledge workers being those who went down the path that you went down, that I went down, which is, hey, we were promised in the 90s, if you just go to college, doesn't matter what degree you get, you're going to come out on the other end with a good paying job.
Everybody said go to college. And once you went to college, everybody said go to grad school.
Right. And so for me, it was go to college, graduate right at the recession of 2008. There are no jobs. I hit it. I hit it well. And so then it was like, go to grad school out of desperation.
Yeah, right.
And then still hope it gets better, and it doesn't. Right. So then you realize that there's not a lot of jobs. I got through just by sheer tenacity and, bullying. Like, I bullied my way into a very basic role at IBM for very low pay. But it took all of that effort just to do that. And the point is, like with the book, is I start to push these knowledge workers who are at risk, right? Which is really everybody, to say, start learning something on the side. It could be something you're passionate about. Like maybe you have always wanted to build a chair.
Sure.
Start there.
Right.
Maybe you find something. Like it can be a couple hours a week. Maybe it's going and doing a night welding class. Maybe it's knitting socks. Like, my definition of trade is very loose. Like, anything that you could potentially make money off of is useful. And you have to start building that muscle to spend extra time outside of your day, which is very difficult, right? As a father, 3 kids, a job, being an author, a welder, doing electrician, like trapper. I don't have a lot of time. But I'm still making the time to kind of at least learn some of these skills and start to refine them. Because I find like intellectual curiosity in it too. I think that was the biggest thing for me that was a surprise. Because my generation, I don't know about, where you were 6 years ahead of me, but we were literally like, at my high school, it was a known thing that the kids who went to the, one like municipal, technical school, they were the dumb kids. That's what we were told.
Right.
Not true.
100%. That's what people were told.
Yeah. And that's what was told. So I was like, oh, I don't want to go there. And I even had a high school teacher, I think it was like a civics class. On her desk, she had a fake college application and a hard hat. And she had a little sign right in front of it in bold letters that just said, you choose. With like a clear, proposition, like one is right and one is wrong. The right one being college. And we were all pushed down that path, and there's no jobs. There's no, not a lot of longevity in it, especially with the advent of AI too. So, I'm telling people to start learning stuff on the side. Start with fixing your toilet when it's leaky instead of outsourcing it to the plumber that, as we talked about before we came on air, might upcharge you now by a significant margin.
Yeah. I mean, just to this point, my capacity in building skills in the trades over the 20 years prior to moving here, I had to replace a water heater recently. Go and like, I know how much a water heater costs because there was a water heater I couldn't replace in a different situation, and I had a handyman bid me $3,600 to replace it, and then I couldn't personally do it, so I had to get this plumber to do it for it was like $2,800 because it was $800 cheaper, almost $1,000 delta. Now, mind you, the water heater was $850, and I know that because I recently moved and had to replace the water heater, and I replaced it myself because I know how to do it. New petty pan, couple different new supply lines, water heater, $950, 45 minutes, right? The most annoying part of the entire thing is I got to take the old one to the dump. Like, that's it. And that delta is literally a roughly $2,000 delta from what it cost the plumber to do it in 45 minutes versus what I did, right? And those are the types of things where it's like, okay, even if you have the white collar job, you're still going to be paying out of the nose for these things. Two things in particular that I really want to hammer on. The accepted metric for success of school systems is the go on rate, right? They want to know how many kids this school sent to like BSU or BYU, whatever, whatever university, whatever college. That's what so their whole thing is like, dude, if we get our go on rate up a little bit higher, we can get this extra funding or we get this extra designation. So all they do is say, hey, all kids need to go to college. Now, we all know that's not true. Not all kids need to go to college. Not all kids have the character, not that it's a character flaw, but like character interests, right? Like if you're really, really into physical stuff, maybe you don't want to be an engineer. Maybe you want to do woodworking, which we need plenty of, right? Like, okay, so not everybody should be going to college and everybody has the interest in going to college. And it's just nonsense, but schools are incentivized to get higher go-on rates, right? So that everybody should go to college, right? Regardless of having the conversation on the ROI, which always leads to the number one stat that people bring, which is, hey, if you go to college versus not going to college, over your lifetime, if you just those are the only two buckets you have. Somebody went to college or they didn't go to college. You will make $1 million more over your lifetime if you go to college. Okay. Can we just acknowledge that it's likely that if college didn't exist, there's a high probability that the people that went to college that were either working harder or had a higher cognitive capacity or both probably would have found a way to make more money than the rest. Like, you're going to have a group that in the absence of college, you're going to make more money. That group's going to make more money. Those probably, if you do the Venn diagram, they probably overlap a lot with the people that are going to college. And by the way, the secondary group accounts for all people. So not just the trades, but people who don't graduate from college, people that don't graduate from high school, people that, don't go on to do a trade, people that just, do the most menial job, addiction, problems, all these things. That's not comparing in good faith.
It's not apples to apples.
Like, okay, how much more do you make than like an electrician if you get a social studies degree or sociology degree, Like, how much do you make than how about a welder? Right? Like, you got your welding certificate. How much do you think you could make if you just walked out? You're like, hey, haven't been welding a long time, but like, I'd like a job. What do you think? Per hour?
20.
20. Great. You start with 20 and then you go up from there.
Yeah.
Right. And I would assume that as you got better and better at welding, you'd probably start making 30 or 40 or $50. Now, you could make the argument, well, you make 20 bucks in and out. Yeah, man. But what's your growth potential there? Right. Do you have like a lot of employees at In-N-Out making 40 and 50 bucks an hour? Is In-N-Out really in demand? No, but welders are, right? Linemen are, all of these jobs are. There's just an inherent dishonesty around this discussion of you'll make more money if you go to college compared to just everyone who doesn't go to college. It's like, yeah, what if you don't go to college, but you take a very specific trade path? There's no argument that says the tradesmen don't make more than, college educated.
And I think why not both, right? Like, I don't know if you call it like a Montessori approach, but like letting these kids kind of figure out where they gravitate towards. Like, you said you used the Venn diagram. I use that terminology a lot because you have people who are born to swing a hammer. You have people who were born to be PhDs, and they'll never overlap. But the majority of the people are kind of in the middle where, we could reskill people who are knowledge workers. I think there's a lot of tradesmen out there that could probably leverage some MBA type of curriculum to really grow their business. There's a lot of overlap there that's not being tapped into. And right now, the jobs are moving more towards trades. And ironically, talk about AI, one of the things, and I don't have the perfect stat, you might have to pull it up at some point, but every single prompt you give ChatGPT, have you ever seen this about like how much electricity and power goes into every single prompt?
No.
It's like an absurd amount.
Oh, I had no idea.
Yeah, like every time you like pull up your ChatGPT, you do a prompt, like the amount of energy that takes is unreal. And right now we're building more and more data centers and areas that can house all this compute to actually run these things in CUNA. All over
electricity.
And like, they can't hire enough electricians to build all this, welders to put the buildings
Right.
together.
Now, mind you, the data center only has 50 full-time employees.
Yeah.
But the welders and electricians and, framers and everything, they're going to be employed for a good amount of time building this data center.
Yep. And then the next one is going to be built. And, having a specialty that you've worked on these things, like it is going to continue to grow of the need for tradespeople with, the continued push for AI as it becomes more and more pervasive.
Look, I think anybody, especially for people with, any kind of economics background, it's supply and demand. All you got to do is say like, hey man, if my plumber can command $150 an hour and my buddy, I had a buddy, this is the first time I realized that, going to college and continuing to get advanced degrees is not always the answer. I had a buddy back in the former state that literally is an attorney, and he was struggling to make $75,000 a year.
Yep.
I'm like, wait, you had to go to law school? And like, you have law school that you're driving a, what is that,
Nissan,
Geo? No, it was a G, what is that? Like
the Geo, like the little hatchback.
Yeah. Yeah. What brand of car was that? Or was the Geo the brand?
No, Geo wasn't the brand. It was
like a Nissan Geo. I
Yeah.
can't remember. Anyway, yeah, he was
Everyone
driving the
knows
Geo.
what you're talking about.
Yeah. Oh, dude, it was like a little hatchback thing. Like, it was ridiculous, right? And here he's driving this thing around, and he's, quote, an attorney.
with boatloads of debt on top of it.
Boatloads of debt, not happy, doesn't like his bosses. And that's when I found out he's like, yeah, about 80% of attorneys in the state that shall not be named are just mom and pop attorneys that really don't make very much money. It's like, wait, what? And then you have, man, I had this client whose grandfather was a plumber from England, right? He came over here when he was like 20. And he's a really funny guy. He was like 80 when I was chatting with him. Don was his name, right? Don, this old English guy with accent. And he's like, I don't even know what plumbers do here. He was like, back in England, we would do the roof, and you come here, nope, that's the roofer's job. And then, and he was telling me all about old plumbing techniques with like lead sealants. And he's like, every plumbing outfit in England had a lead, you have the apprentice there keeping the fire warm, keeping the lead hot. And then, when he calls for it, he's got to bring it over to the ladle, and you ladle it on, and you have the asbestos rags, and you're like, it's like, you're going to die for sure. But like,
He'll outlive all of us.
yeah. Oh, for sure. Don was like on point, but he was like, and you talk to these Berkeley types and, academic types, and they're all, very proud of their $100,000 a year. And it's like, I feel bad telling them, plumber's making $250,000,
Yeah.
And you're like, wait, you make how much? And he was just running a plumbing outfit, not just, but he was running a successful long-term plumbing outfit. He had this trade, and he was making $250,000 a year, like strumming on a banjo. Didn't work weekends unless he got overtime.
There's a podcast called Acquiring Minds, and they talk about people who build businesses. And I listened to one this past week where, someone completely unrelated to the trades, was at retirement age, had sold a company he had created. It was like an ed tech type of thing.
Sure.
And he and his wife, they got bored a couple weeks in, and they're like, well, what can we buy? And they're like, what's going to be sustainable? And of course, they kind of landed on trade work. And ultimately, they ended up buying a welding shop that ended up coming with 2 welders. And they're turning over $4 million a year net profit just doing bespoke pipe welding with 2 employees.
This is what we need to do right now. You're quitting your job. I'm quitting my fake job. And we're starting, because I want to go
fabrication shop.
I want to go into nuclear welding. Like, we could make a lot of money, man. I'm telling you right now, like, this is the thing.
Yeah.
This is cutting edge, because we're going to need a lot. The next wave is energy.
Yeah.
Right? Like, we just need energy. All we need to do is find out.
To keep pushing this AI boom.
I know. That's what I'm saying, bro. We need to find out what the most in-demand trade is for building small modular reactors. And then we need to go do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's, I think there's a spot over in the middle of the desert in Idaho. What is it? Idaho National Laboratory.
Oh my God. I may or may not have the director coming on later this week.
Well, there we go.
I also just landed the chief operating officer for Idaho Power. He's going to come on as well. That's going to be a great conversation. Yeah. I have some wild people. I have the president of the Public Utility Commission coming on, Ed Lodge.
Well,
it's going to be great times.
It's going to, I guarantee it's all going to kind of fall in this like trade gap
Right.
area. They're going to say, we don't have enough people. That's my prediction.
Well, there are some other things they're going to say too. I'll tell you off air.
Okay.
It's pretty good. Listen, the trade gap. Now again, I have to do what I did last time, which is get the book and
then read the book
and then have you back on. Dude, I really appreciate you. I know you have family stuff going on today. Thank you for coming in again. Did we miss anything? I feel like we've just like glossed over it. It's been well over an hour. The screensaver came on. That's my indication. It's been an hour.
Okay.
Yeah. So we definitely blew past your daughter's swim practice.
Keep going then.
Just keep going. Do you go over what a friend of mine, old real estate mentor, pointed this out years ago to me. He was like, listen, when Rataranges came out, do you know what a Ratarange is? It's a microwave. They used to be called Ratarange. He's like, if you had a Ratarange oven in your apartment, it was this major asset. People loved them, right? So you get these big built-ins, or the big one with the tiny windows, and he was like, they were $300, but you could get a workman to come and install it for like $8 an hour. Yep. Okay, so it was this really big thing. He's like, things were really expensive, service was really cheap. He's like, now you get a microwave for $75, no problem. Big window, I got one out there. It's beautiful. But if you have to have somebody install it, that's like $200 an hour. He's like, service and things have flip-flopped. So as manufacturing has increased in efficiency and increased in scale, we have scaled back on our service industry and devalued it to the point where it's one of the most valuable things you can do. Like, do you get into that and the inversion of like essentially material item cost versus service cost?
Yeah. So, I mean, the book's laid out in like a historical context,
Fantastic.
like from 1917 with the introduction of the Smith-Hughes Act in Georgia, which was to bring agricultural education to, rural impoverished areas in the state of Georgia. And then that kept going till we hit the peak in 63 with a bunch of amendments to that, where I think probably in the 1960s, we had it the best, where we had wood shop, metal shop in almost every school.
Right.
We were trying to build well-rounded, educated people. A lot of people went the school route, a lot of people went the trade route. And then in 1983, and you might know this too, there was a paper that came out by the National Education Commission called A Nation at Risk. And that paper outlined everything around STEM, rightfully so, and how China was going to beat us if we did not start to double down. But that ultimately led to a redirection of funds away from the trades into the 80s, into building computer labs, things like that. And then ultimately all the way leading up to the No Child Left Behind Act, where we were really pushing like college or bust.
Right.
And, so I do cover the whole, education side and the economic side around like that flip-flop between, when things flipped. And, just as a stat, like my high school graduating year, there were 3.3 million high school graduates nationwide in the US. 67%, I think that's the right number, went on to a higher 2-year, 4-year pay-to-play degree. 67%. So it's like 2.2 million kids out of 3.3 million. Some did nothing, like you mentioned earlier, turned out to be addicts, whatever. Right. Some went to the military, which you might argue could lead to a trade. And then only like 7%, around 200,000, went to like trade schools. That was 1 year. So you think about that math year over year over year, and you start to see where like now that we have, for every, 5 tradesmen that are retiring, 2 are replacing them. So it's an unsustainable number that we're at right now with the amount of people we need to do the stuff that's going to keep AI going, that's going to keep all these different things that we've become accustomed to going.
Man, well, I'll tell you what, I've definitely felt kind of out of sorts when I moved here for a number of reasons, obviously, but one, what value could I bring to the world? And I totally agree with you. I met this guy we train with, Eric, Big Eric.
Oh, yeah.
Like Sean Connery Eric.
Oh, yeah.
Like Sean Connery in The Rock.
I interviewed him for this book. He's got a
He's in here?
Yeah, he's in there.
Dude, he came into trades. Not like he came into he moves here, he's done very well in business, and he gets into trades, and he and his sons are like I shouldn't out them, but the point is they're like gobbling up these little trade businesses and crushing, and they're making good. And he was like, look, man, it's like falling out of the sky. Like there's money literally falling into the lap of anybody who's capable of doing like asphalt. Yep. Like if you can do asphalt, you just got contracts and money coming your way. There's a guy who moved into this neighborhood, a dude I met through a number of things, and he was an insurance guy, and there was such a lack of reliable landscape people that he just on the side started doing landscaping, and now the developer is hiring, giving him like the prime contracts to do landscaping. He has no background in landscape, or had no background in landscaping before he moved here. He just find work like 100%, works really hard because he's doing his insurance stuff, and then in between phone calls he's calling like distributors in Oregon for rock and stuff. So he's hustling, but it's right there. Like, it's all right there. And especially in this state, in the state of Idaho, man, with the growth that's happening, even in the former state, like where are they going to get all the people to rebuild the cities that burned, right? That's all right there for our kids, right? And I think we need a cultural shift, a cultural recalibration of what we think success looks like for our children, right? Because yeah, I mean, you could have an MBA, you could have advanced degrees, you could have all these things, and you may know a lot of people committing suicide around you because they can't find a job.
Yeah. I 100% agree. I think it's that mentality of our generation coming up on the time value of money. And we talked a little bit about that before we came on air, where, we were brought up on, what's your hourly rate?
Right.
If your toilet breaks and, Matt and Todd Associates, they, make $200 an hour, even though you could go fix that toilet, it actually makes more economic sense for you to sit on your butt and call a tradesman to come and fix it. But now with those prices going up, the availability of tradesmen going down, like you call somebody when your water heater breaks and they're like, yeah, it might be 3 weeks till I get to you. Now we need to like reestablish that like time value of money into what I call time value of experience. Be like, it might not make economic sense still to go and tackle these different things, but the experience you get in building some level of resilience, some level of self-reliance is totally worth it.
Right. Dude, I got a great one for you. Okay, so I'm on a domestic well. Okay, and by the house, and the guy's like, hey, there's an abandoned well over here. I was like, what do you mean abandoned? He was like, well, we hit water, but like we couldn't get it clear out, blah, 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 blah. I was like, okay, great. And, but this well's working fine. So we have a well guy come out and we're like, hey, this is an abandoned well. Like, what could we do? And he's like, well, there's water at 30 feet or something. He's like, but it says in the notes, which the seller did not say. They was like, they threw some stuff down there, so you may not be able to get it going again.
Uranium, a little.
Oh, no, like bentonite.
Okay.
And I don't know the situation. This was like 30, 40 years ago. So if the seller was like, hey, I don't remember that, like, totally fine. Doesn't matter to me. I'm not bothered by it at all. Love the place, 100%. But I was like, I wonder if we could get this well going. The guy's like, well, look, we could schedule somebody to come back out here and essentially test it. So we'll do like a slow drain on it and then test the water level, see what the recharge rate is of the well. And we just go from there. I'm like, okay, that sounds great. When can you do that? He's like, well, first off, I can't, like, I'll call you if I'm in the area. So, like, first off, I don't even get in a schedule with this well guy. And he's like, it'll be $400 for the call and then like 150 per hour after. I'm like, okay, like, it'll be worth it if we can get the well going. I don't know if we can or not. And over the next couple of days, I'm like, dude, $400 just to show up.
Did he give you any indication of how many hours it might take?
No, but I was like, okay, the real problem, the only problem is that we don't know if the water comes back or not. He's like, because there's bentonite down there. Bentonite's going to get in the screens of the well and it's not going to refill. Bentonite's like clay, right? Yeah. I'm like, okay, well, all I need to do is just remove some of the water from the well, and the water's like 30 feet down there. And it's like, thinking in my head, like, yeah, dude. So what the seller did do, which was super awesome, is he had built this like emergency zombie apocalypse well thing. So it's essentially like a 4-inch black ABS with a cap on the bottom with a that has a hole in it that has a lacrosse ball. Right. So you drop it down into the water and the water shoots up past the lacrosse ball. And then when you start pulling it up, the lacrosse ball sinks to the bottom and plugs the hole. So I just spend half an hour pulling this water out, measuring the height of the water, how far it goes down. Turns out the well's dead. There's no way. But I saved myself $400 plus whatever hourly. Thank you, guy who sold me the house, for leaving me that thing. Because I figured it out. It's like, okay, great. Well, this isn't an option. And again, it's not a big deal because like we're good with the water supply we have. I was just hoping to get a little bit more for irrigation. But dude, it's that kind of thing where it took me half an hour and I probably saved $600 at least.
It's that mentality of try first, like the fix it. Like, we just, everything's disposable now in most instances. But if you give a little bit of like elbow grease and you try a little bit, like you could probably fix a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And people are just primed, ironically, Amazon Prime, to like just go on and just order another one.
Right.
Replace it.
Right.
Easy enough. And that's not going to last forever either. So you got to start practicing now.
I got to check this out. Do you know how many of the legislative reps that I spoke to that are in the trades? Like, we're talking heavy machinery operator, sprinkler repair guy. So he only works like 6 months a year. Window treatment guy, like all of these. And again, I'm not putting them down at all. It's just like, I think people come, like you and I will come into a state like Idaho, neither of us born and raised here. We come into the state and we're like, okay, like you got to get a degree and you got to do these things. I feel like the native Idahoans are like, nah, bro, I put up Christmas lights. I only work 3 months a year. I make 6 figures. I go home.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I repair sprinklers.
Yeah. It was, in the book I talk about it, it's like my cognitive dissonance. Like I was so bought into that college or bust idea.
Yes.
It took me getting multiple degrees before I like finally like that. It was like my cult leader. Like it finally saw that, oh, he's just like a rapey, terrible person.
Your cult lead? Wait, you're in a cult?
No, I'm saying like the idea. Yeah. Would you like to join, by the way?
We have a really cool opportunity for you.
It is. It's great. But like the cognitive dissonance I built up around going to college, that being the path, and then finally getting a job and having that disappointment of seeing what the number actually was after like 6 years of higher education and all the debt. I was like, oh, I'm the dunce. Like I'm the moron. Like I'm the one who bought into this like hook, line, and sinker. But then I see people who went into trades right out of high school who, you know, they weren't making bank right out of school, but they were making money instead of me paying money for 6 years.
Right.
And, you know, I had to look at myself. I'm like, man, like it's not for everybody. It might not have worked out for me either. I got to be honest with that. However, had I known that that was actually a legitimate option, maybe I would have explored it some.
Right.
Versus what you and I both face, which was don't do it. Don't do it. That's not the path. That is the wrong path.
Right.
You know?
Right. And putting that down when that guy doesn't care.
No.
Like he's going home. He's just, Well, listen, man, I appreciate you. I'm very excited to read your second book. I very much enjoyed your first one. Thank you for coming in. And let's connect after I'm done with this one too.
Sounds good.
All right. Thanks, bud.